If you're interested in the Dogman topic, it's a given that you have an opinion regarding how dangerous you think dogmen are or aren't to people who encounter them. Well, with that in mind, I've invited 3 dogman researchers on the show tonight who've all had experiences with dogmen and one listener who thinks dogmen are inherently dangerous to talk about that. The researchers are Donna Wells Fink, Dave Leidy, and Bachochin. The listener's name is Wag. Welcome to the show, everyone.
Hello.
How is everybody tonight?
Hey, thanks for having us on, Vic.
Hello, Vic.
Hey guys, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. To start things off, I'm going to ask all of you to tell us about yourselves and your dogman credentials. Donna, please go first.
I have been investigating Bigfoot and the Dogman and UFOs and other paranormal things since about 2011. I first got interested because I read Linda Godfrey's books, and I didn't realize there were any dogmen or Bigfoot around here until I read her books. And then I realized that there were Bigfoot and dogmen within just a couple of miles from me. So that's how I got interested. And since then, we've had a lot of adventures, a lot of weird things happen, as you normally would with the dogman and Bigfoot and UFOs involved. And I've also held the Beast of Bray Road conference 2 years in a row now because no one else was celebrating the Beast of Bray Road in Elkhorn. And I thought it was just time for everyone to get together and talk about the Beast of Bray Road because he is still around. And that's how I got started. And that's what I'm doing to this very day.
He sure is still around. How about you, Dave? Please fill us in.
Well, I've always pretty much been interested in most paranormal subjects, with quite a few experiences going back to adolescence, really, being involved with several groups. I was aware of Sasquatch. I was aware of Dogman to some extent. And then floodgates kind of opened back in 2009 when I had a pretty serious experience with a group of dogmen in North Carolina. After that experience, I went on to research pretty much on my own, though I did contact a lot of other researchers over the years. I have been pretty involved almost up to the present day with solo researching. Now, since I've relocated to a remote section of Vermont, it's kind of come to me a little bit where I was not paying as much attention as I did before, but then the area and the surroundings came to me and I started getting involved again pretty intensely.
Yeah, to say the floodgates opened in 2009, that's a huge understatement. That was a very intense encounter, unfortunately. Jay, please give us the 411 on you now.
Well, let's see. I could say that my love has always been for aliens, but it really turned into ghosts. And, Bigfoot and Dogman and these type of creatures weren't on my radar until around 2011, where I was at a paranormal conference and met Linda Godfrey, who befriended her since then and read her books and thought, wait a minute, Bray Road's just like a 13-minute drive from my house. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go down there and kind of just take a look. I mean, I was expecting this forest on both sides, like you're driving and just like, the deep part of the woods, but it's not. It looks like any farm field road by private farmers that are out there. So I really started getting interested in Bray Road, but as well as Sasquatch and Bigfoot, which I've been kind of focusing on both. Came out with my first documentary called Finding Jay, which is on Amazon Prime. That was 2019. And I'm set to release my second documentary this August in a month from now called Beyond the Kettle. And like Donna, it is the same thing because it's hard to put all of these separate phenomena into separate boxes. I'm almost thinking that sometimes they could be one and the same. It's crazy to say, but there is a lot of high strangeness going on out there, from Dogman, Bigfoot to lights. They could be ghosts, they could be UFOs, but it's definitely something that I've been focusing heavily on. It's kind of my passion to hunt the truth and to find those answers.
You have come a long way since 2011.
Absolutely.
Oh, no doubt. And last but not least, Wag, what can you tell us about yourself and any background you have pertaining to Dogmen?
Yeah, Vic, I'm 42 years old, married with 2 children. I spent 21 years as a automotive engineer and worked in management as well. My interest in the cryptids, particularly Dogman and Sasquatch, started when I was a young boy. I would go into the school library and pull every book that they had that dealt with Yetis and Sasquatch, werewolves, Loch Ness Monster, cryptids in general just really enthralled me, as well as the Norse and Greek and Roman mythologies, Egyptian mythologies, and religions as well, theology, Jewish and Christian backgrounds. I haven't had any experiences with any sort of cryptids, but my research is based on every single book, documentary, and podcast I can get my hands on. One of the things that I did for quite some time was looking at documentaries and the books and people's firsthand encounters as they recounted them and started to mark on maps the general areas where these sightings are taking place to try to determine, is there a territorial range? And are certain people seeing the same exact Dogman, or are they a pack mentality?
You told us about checking books out at the library when you were a kid. Did you get the same funny looks that I got back then when I was trying to check those books out?
Oh, yeah, I was always made fun of for reading up on those types of topics. Got poked fun at from a very early age, or even entertaining the idea that something like a Sasquatch or a werewolf was something real. I honestly didn't know about Dogmen until the Beast of Bray Road became national headline news. And that was something that really kind of piqued my interest even more, because werewolf lore has always been something that I've been completely entertained by. So to hear people recount these encounters with an unknown canine cryptid is very entertaining. It's very interesting to me.
Oh, it definitely is interesting. All right, Wag, please make your case now for why you think Dogmen represent such a threat to anyone who encounters them.
Well, I believe that they're an apex predator. Just like anything else that you're going to encounter in the woods, they may have a higher level of intellect, but being in the woods and needing to survive like any other apex predator, given the opportunity, they're going to kill you. Now, they're obviously going to collect their thoughts, just like a bear or a mountain lion or a pack of wolves. They know that men are a danger to them. I mean, people have said, yeah, we've shot a Dogman, it really didn't do nothing to it, but I would be willing to bet that even a small caliber round is probably not something a Dogman wants to encounter very many of. And I mean, it may not kill them, but they probably know that man is a threat to them just as much as they are a threat to man. So when you encounter one, it is probably calculating what its risk is. And given an opportunity, like I said, if it feels that there is very little risk to no risk, you're probably as good as gone.
Jay, what are your thoughts on what Wag just said about this topic?
I would actually 100% agree with him on it. I know for a fact with a lot of these encounters that I've read up right here on Bray Road in southeast Wisconsin has been very terrifying for those that have seen the beast, the Dogman. There hasn't been a lot of any type of attacks. However, you could say the same thing with Sasquatch as well, is that if you run into a rogue one in a certain situation, yes, I definitely think that you could be endangered by these cryptids. Of course, I've never seen one attack in that situation, but I would not go out thinking willy-nilly trying to look for a Dogman or a Sasquatch without having some protection on you, because you just never know.
What would you feel safe going out with when it comes to trying to protect yourself from a Dogman?
Well, since I generally don't go looking for Dogman per se, I'm generally patrolling in a car where I feel a little bit safer in between there. But definitely, some sort of caliper type of, round that you would put in. But I've heard so many stories as well, not just here on Bray Road, but in Michigan and Maine, to where, people have taken shotguns to these and it doesn't seem like it does anything to them, which would make me think, well, are these actually flesh and blood, or what else could they be? Which I don't know. I guess that's how I kind of approach it when I go out, what I call patrolling, is that you would think having a shotgun with you as well. But, I'm not going to go out there and hunt these things, but I don't know how much damage any man's bullet's really going to do. That's my honest opinion on that.
Well, it's good you understand that. That's a very good thing. Dave, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I guess right after my first encounter, I may have agreed with that completely, as that was kind of horrific. Although, nothing happened per se, I did get away. But after that, I did quite a bit of research, and I did go out on my own, more or less, and I did seek them out. And after that, I never had another violent encounter. In fact, it seemed to be the opposite. And while I agree that most predators can be dangerous in any given situation, and, you really don't know what's going through their mind or what trespasses you're having with them. If you're just a random encounter, it may not be a problem, but if you're encroaching on something that is important to them, you may elicit a more violent response. But there's not much of a way to tell with that. Being that said, you have other animals in the forest. You have bear and you have wolf, and there's not a lot of violent encounter there, because the way I see it is a lot of these guys don't want anything to do with us. They would rather avoid us, probably recognizing our apex predator status. I think that most creatures, and including these cryptids, want to just get on with their lives and get on with what they're doing, and they would rather not have anything to do with us at all. I've had this experience with wolves and bear. Now, bears can be different. The bears up here in Vermont, the only thing I see is their back end running away. But in Pennsylvania, say, I've been chased. I've been working on things back in the yard here and had gray wolves less than 100 yards away, and all they wanted to do was check to see that I wasn't going to bother them. I feel that that's the same with Dogman, and in a lot of ways. In fact, I live out in the pretty rural sections of northeastern Vermont. My property backs up to about 10,000 acres of forest land. I feel that I have come very close to serious encounters, and nothing has happened. Nothing has happened in a violent way. I think that these guys are extremely intelligent, and I think that in that viewpoint, they might actually know what would happen to them if they started killing humans indiscriminately.
Donna, where do you stand on this?
From all of my experience and all of my interviews that I've done and all my eyewitnesses, and from my own experiences, I've never had a dogman try to even move towards us or make a growling noise or snarling, except for one gentleman who had it run up the hill from the pond near my home, just a couple miles from my home, but it just ran past them on all fours. And at first they thought it was a bear. Then they knew it wasn't a bear, and it had dog back legs. So they assumed that it was the dogman, which is what they were looking for. And then later they came across it standing along the side of the road, and it didn't make a move towards them. It didn't make any sounds towards them. It was just standing there on two legs. That's been all of my experiences and all of my eyewitnesses. I've never had anyone tell me that a dogman has tried to hurt them or did anything other than maybe run past them, or certainly never hurt them or anything. Now, Lee Hampel did have a hyena on his property where he has the dogman, and it started moving towards them. But then they got on the ATVs and took off. You'll hear them howling and they're coming in, or you'll drive past one and it's running alongside your car, or we've had one standing next to our vehicle, or we've seen them on thermal, and they're just standing there. They're not doing anything. Now, if Dave's had an adventure where he's had something aggressive towards him, then that's the first I've heard of anyone that I've ever talked to or anyone that I've ever met. And all I can really go by is what people tell me face to face or in an interview. I don't like to just hear of, secondhand stories where people say they've been attacked, because we saw dogmen that were more than 20 feet from us, and they just stood there watching us. And one time I was playing a flute, and they came through the woods, and you could hear something coming through the woods. And then on thermal, I could see that it was dogmen, and there were two of them, and they didn't even make a sound. So I'm kind of on the side of I live and let live. I only carry a gun and bear spray because of cougars or humans. Otherwise, I'm not afraid of Bigfoot or the Dogman. Or I do believe that they can hurt you, because I believe Dogmen likely come from another dimension or from UFOs, like on Lee's property, because there are so many UFOs seen there. And can they make you sick? Yes, I think with infrasound or something, they can make you very, very ill. Or like Bigfoot can make you sick if you're irritating them and they want you to leave. We've had that happen. But other than that, I don't know of any attacks.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to happen all that often. I'll never be the one to say that they don't happen, because as people have pointed out, if someone's killed by a dogman, then they can't come forward and talk about it, of course.
Right. And then nobody's ever going to tell you that that was caused by a dogman. They're going to keep that hidden.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a given. And you just pointed out the fact that you've never heard Dave talk about his encounter, the one that happened in 2009. So that everyone listening who does know about what happened to Dave understands what he went through. Dave, would you mind chronicling that experience for us?
Sure. I mean, I'll try to be brief because it encompasses quite a bit of time to go through it all. But I've got to say before I begin that this podcast, episode 95, was also picked up by a film company and put into like a eyewitness narrated dramatization on I think it was called Terror in the Woods, and then it became These Woods Are Haunted. It was played out that way as well. But they left a lot out. So my wife and I were camping. We were camped a lot. We were traveling down to the Outer Banks. On our way down, we passed through a couple of rural portions of North Carolina, and we went across, I think it was Route 64, through the Alligator National Swamp. It was late at night. We were looking for a place to settle. There really wasn't much around. While I'm driving, I heard something hit the trailer, and I didn't really want to check it out. It was pretty remote, but my wife insisted. So, I stopped, and I always carry a 357. I got out of the truck and went out and checked out, and sure enough, there was broken taillight. While I was standing there, there's that feeling when you're in, and if you spend a lot of time in the woods, you know exactly what it is when the hair on the back of your neck stands up and all the insect noises stop. And I did turn around, and I caught sight of what I thought was a big wolf or shepherd, and he surprised the heck out of me when he stood up and locked his knees in and stood up on two legs. He actually growled at me and moved forward, and I caught sight of a second one that was coming around the other way. So when he got close enough, I did shoot him, and I'm sure that I hit him in the shoulder with a 357. And it was just like I punched him. I think I just made him mad. He just not even hardly a flinch, but he did stop. And I took that opportunity to get in the truck and get the heck out of there. To this day, little parts of that kind of haunt me a little bit. I had the feeling that I was being set up. And if I hadn't gotten out of there, we might have been lunch. What I have to say about that is that I believe that for the most part, these guys just want to be left alone. But just like there's good people and bad people, there's good dogmen and bad dogmen. And I don't think that the good ones want the bad ones around. So you have these rogues that travel either alone or in packs, and they're the kind you really don't want to meet. They are going to possibly harm you. That's what I think was going to happen that night. Now, I went on from there to research and didn't discover that in any other instances, but that was a disconcerting night. And there were four of them. I mean, what wound up happening is I got chased down to there. They were chasing the car, and there was two on each side. After I got to about 35 miles an hour, they gave it up. The potential is there, but I'm not sure whether it's always there.
That's well said. Wag, after sharing your opinions with us about dogmen and the dangers they pose, I'm wondering, when you go into places where dogmen might be, are you so frightened that you can't enjoy yourself? And if so, do you ever see that changing?
No, I've never had an encounter to speak of. I have had encounters with apex predators before, but I've never had an encounter in the woods that made me fear returning to the woods. So that really doesn't affect my psychological evaluation of me being in the woods, camping with my son, etc. Because my son's recently discovered bushcraft camping, so that's a big thing for him. But in my region too, we don't have deep forests. So the likelihood, based on, like I said, I did a lot of time mapping encounters, the likelihood is very low for this region where I'm at that we would run into something like that. Although we did have the scarce rare mountain lion show up and a black bear both. But no, it doesn't really impact me at all going into the woods. I think if I had my own personal encounter, maybe my view may change one way or the other, depending on what that encounter was like. But no, it doesn't impact me.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it really would be a shame if you couldn't enjoy yourself out there. So, glad to hear that. What about you, Jay? When you get out of your car in areas where dogmen might be, are you nervous, wreck?
Well, generally I am hiking the Kettle Moraine, which would be still a very good area for a dogman to be, but there's also been a lot of Bigfoot behavior out there. And I can tell you, over these past 8 years of being out there, there are things that will want to make you turn and leave and never return to the woods again. I don't consider myself that Outback Jack diehard researcher to be out there. I just enjoy hiking and I enjoy documenting. But there has been too many times where you could say I've had stones thrown at me, which I didn't know if Dogman could do that at the time. I've had encounters of 3 sets of beady red eyes just out of blackness looking, which weren't aggressive, but there is something that just gets put into you, which gives you so much fear that, like Donna, I don't go out with any type of firearm, and people will call me crazy for that. But I think it's more for going out and trying to be non-aggressive and trying to, I'm going to use air quotes here, but trying to make contact, because we can only take so many fuzzy pictures or tell so many stories. I really want to make that contact of what these cryptids are. And sometimes I think that they could be one and the same, because just like every person that we see, we all look a little different, but we still have the human type form, but we still look different, right? And I think that way with Bigfoot and Dogman. So when I'm out in the kettle, yes, I do. I could have that fear, which makes me turn and do an about face. And I won't come back to the kettle for, a month and a half, just because I'm rattled. But then I get over my fear and I do that again. However, there is this one instance that was right off Bray Road in 2015, about 1:15 in the morning, that I was doing my patrols, right? You can't get out there really because it's all privately farmed owned everywhere. So, if you pull off, you're going to have one farmer call the next farmer, and next, the cops get you for trespassing. However, you are driving on a public road. So I take advantage of that. And it was probably about 1:15 in the morning. I was coming home from the kettle, which Bray Road's right on my way. And going down Bowers, I was driving with another guy who I went out and researched with that day. And he was looking at his camera, and I actually am on Bowers Road passing Lee Hampel's barn, which I did not know Lee at that point yet. I was doing about 18 miles an hour. I don't want to go too slow. Don't want to go too fast. And right off to my left in the middle of the field, the only way I can describe it is a 7-foot-tall upright canine looking up into the sky. My headlights just caught it on the left. And like I told you, I felt a little brave at that point because I'm in my car and with another guy. So I immediately throw it into reverse and back up as quickly as I can and kind of do a 2-point turn to right where I saw it. And the only thing there was open field. There were no trees. This is all farmland and everything was already, harvested. There was nothing there. I don't know how I could have mistaken what this thing was and where did it go so quick. But till this day, driving around Bray Road and Bowers and that surrounding area in Elkhorn, there's something about that whole area that gives you that. So that's my long-winded answer is if I got out of the car, would I feel a little bit fearful? I don't think I would actually get out of the car at 115 on Bowers or Bray Road. There's something not right about that. It kind of has that sinister tone to it, if that makes any sense. So it does leave you a little rattled. That's what I would have to say.
Oh, sure. Yeah, an experience like that would leave anyone rattled. And as crazy as it might sound, I'm glad you don't take a gun with you when you get out of the car and head in, because in my opinion, in a lot of ways, you're safer without a gun than you are with one if you're going to run into a dogman.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. I think these beings, cryptids, I think they can sense how aggressive you're going to be. And even so, like we were just talking about earlier is, what would a round do? Would it actually kill the subject? And is that really what you're doing? Or are you just trying to learn? And that's the approach I take out in the Kettle, Bray Road, anywhere is more of a non-aggressive approach.
Yeah, if you do fire at a dogman, I just think you're more than likely increasing the odds of being killed by one. Dave, how fearful are you when you head into places like that?
I'm not fearful at all. I try to stay completely aware of my surroundings. My head's on a swivel. I'm looking in places that I never used to look before, in ways that I never used to look at them before. But it's not really fear, although I had to say something about fear, is that a lot of the stories and descriptions and recounts of Dogman and Sasquatch have instilled a bit of fear in everyone. That's just natural, and also natural that we as humans are fearful of the unknown. I'm not particularly fearful. I've been out there quite a bit. I live out in a very rural section. I'm out there all the time. If anything, I kind of feel at home in the woods. I always carry a sidearm if I'm out there. And I'm not sure I subscribe to the cryptids sensing the weapon as a threat unless the person that has the weapon has aggressive tendencies or is emulating aggressive feelings. Sasquatch, Dogman, I think that they're basically like a warrior caste, and I think they respect strength and they respect what that means. And so you can carry a gun and not use it the same way as they have claws and teeth that they don't use. And they may respect that as you being a similar warrior caste. It's just an idea that I have because of all the other times after North Carolina that I've been out, I've never drawn my gun and I've never had to. I don't think that anything's been threatened by me, and I didn't feel threatened by them. There was a couple of weird instances here and there where the situation required different reactions, but I don't really have any problem with the woods whatsoever. And I think that it's especially so going forward. I have been in Alaska fishing. We were fishing the Kenai for salmon. Less than 100 yards off, we had grizzly bears doing the exact same thing. And all they really cared about was making sure that we weren't going to bother them. And that's kind of how I feel about all the cryptids is if we're not bothering them, they don't particularly want to bother us, whether we're armed or not.
Well, as always, you raise some really good points, Dave. Donna, it sounds to me like you're not afraid to go into Dogman country. Is that an accurate assessment?
It is, absolutely, because we are always going out there, probably at least 3 times a week. We're going somewhere looking for Bigfoot or the Dogman or both. I like to get out to Bray Road and Bowers Road as much as possible. We've also located the quarry where the latest sighting, besides Lee's sightings, and you had the gentleman on your show at one point, Vic, that he was working, testing groundwater at a quarry in Elkhorn, and he heard the Dogman and saw it. And we just head for those areas. Actually, I have a best friend that has a death wish. So she leads and I follow. And as long as I'm not with somebody who's a big chicken, then I'm fine. And it's just 2 girls going together, or maybe 3 girls. And I think that they know what your intentions are. I hope that that's the case. And I think it is, that they know that you're not out there to hurt them. Even if I would have a gun, I wouldn't use it on them because it's not going to hurt them anyway. But being 2 females out in the woods alone, or if I go by myself, then it's always a worry with humans. And there's the occasional cougar maybe, but otherwise, no, every once in a while when we go to Avon Bottoms out in southwest Wisconsin, it's very nerve-wracking because that's an area that is well known for tales of Chicago mobsters taking dead bodies and getting rid of them out at Avon Bottoms. And I'm sure there's Bigfoot out there because we've heard hammering and knocking. A couple of people, well, Katie's aunt saw 3 dogmen out there. And if you go out at night during the middle of the night, it's very spooky. So we set off a predator call and we stay in the car. And then we put the predator call on a rope so we can bring it back into the car because we don't want to get out of the car after we've called predators in. It's kind of nerve-wracking because we did have a tall, dark being standing next to the vehicle while we were watching an orb on the other bank of the river. And it's scary, but it's an adventure and it's always fun. That's how I look at it.
You say it's scary to do the type of research you do, but you still do it. So that takes a lot of guts, and I'm really impressed. I've always been impressed by you.
Oh, thank you. We're out to have an adventure, and that's all basically we're doing. I'm not out to prove it to anyone. I don't care if you believe me. I don't care if you believe in them. I love to talk to witnesses, and I like to be out in the field.
I'm just so glad you can do that. That's great. Now that we've covered some basic topics about how dangerous each of you think dogmen are, let's talk about the alleged LBL murders now. One by one, I'd like the 4 of you to share your thoughts on whether you believe those murders actually happened or not, and any other thoughts you'd like to share with us about the matter. Donna, please go first.
My thoughts on the LBL are that I would have to see some sort of proof to believe it. For some reason, I just can't buy it. Not that many people not slaughtered like that, but it's possible that it could have happened, but I'd like to see more proof. The one thing I absolutely don't believe in is the gentleman who's been going around for the last year saying that he was there at the time and nobody knew it, but he was hiding under the trailer or something, and he saw the whole thing and he never reported it. I don't know if everyone's heard of him lately, but he's trying to say that he was there and he saw the whole thing, and I don't buy that at all. Could someone have been killed? Maybe, but I just have a hard time believing it.
I agree with you. I don't buy that story either.
Oh, good.
How about you, Jay? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, just hearing about the LBL murders, not too familiar with the whole entire case, just kind of a brief summary of that. But the first thing that I thought of, especially the end where the body was put up in a tree, when I first heard this story, it almost sounded like a rogue cat or a mountain lion ravishing, only because there has been cases to where the feline will actually take their prey up into the tree to feast, to keep it off the ground. And that's kind of what I thought of as first. I mean, of course, I wasn't there. I did not interview the people. So it's really hard for me to go one way or another on it. But my gut feel is just telling me that it wasn't all true. It's kind of what my gut feeling is telling me.
Well, I always say go by your gut, so I'm glad you're doing that. How about you, Dave? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it certainly was a sensational report. It definitely made its way around the world. As far as a grisly attack by Dogman, I suppose that can happen. Again, it might be a rogue. And as far as any attack, really, I mean, I don't want to downplay other people's experience that have had horrific ones with Dogman or Sasquatch for that matter, because they feel the way they feel through their experience and what has happened with them. As far as the Land Between the Lakes incident, I have my doubts about some of it. I suppose it could have happened, and I agree that it does sound very cat-like behavior. But I think that rogue attacks of that magnitude are extremely rare, if any. I'm not really sure exactly how I do feel about that. I have a certain measure of doubt, but at the same time, it's not impossible.
Well said, you never know. What about you, Wag? Do you believe those LBO murders actually happened? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't believe that it actually happened. I think it's a fantastic story. But whenever you look at the details of the case as it's told, there isn't any actual reports, physical reports, that even incline that this happened. But when you listen to the story as it's told, the family was discovered by other campers. You know, the state troopers were called in, well, with park rangers. You know, other law enforcement agencies were involved. There's no secondary stories to go along with it. There's no family looking for these people. There's no campers coming forward saying, you know, yeah, we were there, we discovered the bodies. There's no details of anything other than just the story itself. So it makes it unbelievable to that extent. If there was something else that came out about it, if it was something that had happened at the time, not now, like Donna alluded to, you know, there's a gentleman running around saying, you know, I was there, I was hiding under the camper. This would have been something that came out long ago. You know, the murders supposedly happened in, you know, the early 80s. This would have been national headline news, unless there was some sort of great cover-up that managed to keep everybody involved quiet for this long. So I just don't believe that story. I mean, fantastic story, but I don't think that it happened like that.
Yeah, the story is pretty fantastical. Maybe it did happen, maybe it didn't, but you really do have to wonder. If I had a nickel for every time I've been told that I only speak with eyewitnesses who actually got away from the dogmen they encountered, I'd be a rich man by now. Do you subscribe to that line of thinking, Wag?
I would agree with that statement. We have a lot of unidentified missing persons that happen to go missing in national parks all over the country. And some may be completely accidental, but some, the investigation turns up facts that can't be dismissed. So very experienced hunters going out into the woods, finding their guns smashed and their articles of clothing here, there, and then, you know, finding other articles of clothing, their personal belongings, you know, miles away. That's hard to ignore and say that something like that, like a dogman or a Sasquatch, isn't responsible, because they didn't just fall off the face of the earth. And them being avid outdoorsmen or women or etc., they typically would know how to handle themselves, and you would think you would find some sort of clues as to what happened to them technically. And then historically, looking at the stories around dogmen, going all the way back to the indigenous Americans and the colonists even, that have talked about these things, it seems like dogmen, and Sasquatch for that matter, were much more territorial in the 1800s and before. They were a much larger problem for these people than what we're seeing nowadays. So who's to say that those things still aren't going on? A dogman's not snatching a hunter here or there, or whoever may wander into their territory, and we don't ever hear about it. It's just a missing person.
You sure do put a lot of thought into things, don't you, Wag?
Yeah, that's part of being an engineer for 21 years. There's a lot of critical thinking that goes into everything that I do, problem solving and etc. I mean, even I look at footprints that people post pictures of online, and I'm giving them a very critical overview, because when you're talking about an animal of that stature, that size, when you look at a footprint, there should be something there indicating beyond just the footprint, the actual size of that creature. Take example for myself. I'm 6'5", 260 pounds. I wear a size 15 shoe. When I walk out in the riverbeds barefoot, I mean, yeah, I don't have as wide a foot as a Bigfoot, but I leave a heavy print. Now, when I see a dogman's footprint on some of these soft ground type terrains, you know, I'm looking at the depth of the print and things like that. Does the print support the idea that this thing is 7 foot tall and 450 pounds. So yeah, I'm a critical thinker when it comes to people's firsthand accounts. And I don't mean to come across as dismissing somebody's accounts. It's in the details. The proof from an investigation standpoint, people like Jay, Donna, David, who are going out and trying to do the research, it's in the details. Whether or not we're going to prove a Dogman or a Sasquatch is out there.
You're right. It always is in the details. Definitely. And you were a size 15? Holy cow, you must be part Sasquatch.
That is actually my nickname, Squatch. So
I see why. That's funny. How about you, Jay? Please talk us through your thoughts on this.
I honestly believe that these creatures or these cryptids are intelligent. As Wag was talking about, there are a lot of missing people all over the United States in different parks. But I sometimes ask myself, why aren't there more attacks or more disappearances? And again, are they territorial? Is Dogman territorial from Bigfoot and vice versa? Or are we just assuming they are? I think that these creatures are very intelligent and not so much like just like kind of a rogue animal, such as, a bear or mountain lion, cougar, anything like that. Because I think the one thing that people may overlook is that maybe there's no disappearances or attacks because these creatures know what a consequence is. Unlike, a mountain lion or a bear or a wolf or a coyote, if they're hungry, they're going to attack without measure, without consequence, because they don't understand that. And that's what I believe that these are. So when it comes down to it, yeah, I think if you approach a rogue one, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, they could definitely take you out and you'll just become another statistic of a missing person. But this is just kind of where I come from with it, because just like on this whole Dogman world or Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts, it's saturated with a lot of people's opinions. And it's basically what I try to do is I try to find my own truth without letting all these other opinions distract me. Just like Wag was saying, being out in the woods, you've got to look at the detail for it. I mean, 100%. And just like Donna was saying, I'm not out there trying to convince anybody that there's a Bigfoot or a Dogman out there. I love to share my story. I love to talk, and I love to talk safety. But when it comes to these creatures taking you out, and I don't mean for dinner, I mean actually being aggressive that way, I believe, yeah, it is possible. The wrong place at the wrong time. And they know what a consequence is. I can't stress that enough. They see us and go, all right, I could take them out. I have had a bad day, but I know as soon as I do, there's going to be other people out here looking for them. And when that happens, that disrupts the whole flow of what they do every day and night out there. So that's pretty much my opinion on that.
Wow, I'm blown away by the level, the quality of answers I'm getting here tonight. All four of you, you're knocking it out of the park. Donna, what are your thoughts on this topic?
I don't believe a lot of people are missing because of Dogman or Bigfoot. I believe that like the Missing 411 books are about people who have either stepped through a portal or a portal's been directed at them, or people from another time, probably our future, are visiting and taking the DNA that they need. So they'll take people. Usually they bring them back alive, I think. Sometimes they don't. But what's going on in the Missing 411 books, I believe, are like Jim Peniston said. He's the one the sergeant that touched the downed UFO at Rendlesham Forest in the 80s. And what he discovered, the message that he received was that they're from the year 8100. They are time travelers who are coming back into time, taking chromosomes and DNA and taking what they need because they're trying to save the human race in the future. And when they become impatient, they take what they need. I think that has a lot to do with people missing. I don't think it's Bigfoot or Dogmen. I just don't believe that's going on, but I could be wrong. I could always be wrong. I've read The Rundisham Enigma by Jim Penniston, and I completely believe that they're coming from the future, and they take people into their ships and they take the materials they need and they do whatever they need to be done in order to save the human race. And then they bring us back alive. And sometimes we're not alive, I think.
You just might be right about all of that, but I'll tell you this, if I had to choose, I think I'd rather go out at the hands of a dogman than walk through a portal or be taken into the future or you name it. So those are just my thoughts on that.
Me too.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to hear any thoughts you've got on this, Dave.
Well, I think I agree more with Jay. And I touched on it before that I believe that these cryptids, Sasquatch, Dogman, and who knows what else, they're sentient and they're very intelligent. And they may understand what will happen if they start killing humans, because they obviously are observing us. They have to know that we're the dominant species on the planet. And if they're intelligent in that regard, then they've got to know that if they start taking us out, there's going to be, like he said, consequences. There's going to be something's going to happen that's going to disrupt the way they want to exist on the planet. I'm not saying that they don't do it. I think that some of this missing persons may be the case of rogue or semi-rogue cryptids that feel that there isn't going to be a consequence if they can take that person. I think for the most part, especially with Dogman, is they are going to defend their territory or whatever it is they're defending, because we don't know. But by doing that, they'll scare somebody within an inch of their life, but they won't touch them. And I think that's a lot of intelligence right there, because other predators won't do that. If they're going to scare them, if they're going to charge them, they might do a bluff charge, but they're probably going to follow through. Whereas these guys don't seem to.
Like I said before, I'm just blown away by all the thought that all of you have put into these topics I've been asking you tonight. I'm really impressed. But having said that, it's about time for us to get out of here. But before we do, I want to ask all four of you for your closing comments. Donna, please go first.
I just didn't want to encourage everyone to get out into the woods. If you're afraid, don't be afraid. I don't think they're going to hurt you. I think they know what you have in mind and what your intentions are, and that if you mean no harm, you're going to be fine. I've been out by myself for hours at a time, 4 or 5 days a week in the woods, and I know there's Bigfoot there. And that's where the Dogman also appeared, and a UFO also showed up, and a flying man bat. So nothing's ever harmed me. I think that the Dogman likes to come back and scare you and let you know that he knows where you live. I have no doubt that happens, because that's happened to Travis, one of my eyewitnesses, and that happened to me. They come back and they let you know. I just kind of chuckle and just appreciate the visit. They're not going to hurt me, and I don't worry about it. Just don't be afraid out in the woods. Just enjoy your time. You can't stay in the house. You can't be afraid of everything. Just go out in the woods and enjoy yourself.
I'm just blown away by the fact that you go out and do these things the way you do them, Donna. You really don't frighten easily, do you?
No, I think it's just the humans and maybe a cougar, if there's any around, which there shouldn't be. But those are the only things that frighten me, are humans, basically.
Yeah, they probably do present more of a threat than dogmen do, at least in my opinion. If you've had a dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my 2 Bigfoot shows, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know. All right, back to the show. How about you, Wag? Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yes, Vic. My encouragement to everybody is to listen to everybody's encounters with an open mind and don't treat it as such a fantasy. I mean, it's not been that long ago where we've discovered, other primates that are in existence. that are very closely related to us. So to say that there's not a humanoid canine of some sort cryptid out in the forest, I don't think it's that far-fetched. Stories going back, millennia, talking about them, even historical documents such as the Bible talks about dogmen. I wouldn't encourage anybody to go out into the woods lightheartedly looking for them. I would encourage research, such as Donna, Jay, and David are doing. I would take every precaution necessary before heading out into the woods, because in my mind, until we know otherwise for certain, it isn't just a apex predator with a heightened level of intelligence and cunning compared to what we've seen out of, bears or lions and etc. So I wouldn't do it unless you were steadfast in the fact that you're not going to completely wet yourself out in the woods when you come across it. That would be my only thing.
Well, that's all well said. Very well said. Dave, please give us any closing comments you might have.
I agree with Donna, is that the best way to face your fears is exactly what I said, to face them. But you shouldn't be afraid of the woods. If you enjoy going to the woods and you enjoy your time out there, don't stop doing it. It's very, very rare that you're going to have an encounter unless, of course, you're looking for it. I always loved the woods. I was always at home in the woods. And I had a close relative that told me that before I went into the woods, I should ask its permission before I came in. I asked the forest for its permission, asked the creatures that live there for permission to be there. Leave some seed beads, leave some raw tobacco on a rock before you go in as a gift to the forest. And then go in with an open mind and without aggression. And I think that's the key, is that if you do not have an aggressive heart, then anything that's above average intelligence is going to know that. I have been out deep in the woods by myself and actually felt, in a way, protected, if that's the right word, watched over by, I believe, Sasquatch, possibly Dogman, because I have seen them, whereas others have not. I have friends up here that have been in the woods their entire lives, and they're resistant to the thought because they've never seen. But I have. And I haven't had any bad experiences. In fact, they've all been very positive. So as far as that goes, I would definitely tell everybody to be, as usual, aware of your surroundings for any reason, like Donna said about humans. And I have a certain fear of alligators, but I don't worry about them too much in Vermont. Just go out, enjoy yourself, and try not to succumb to the fear of the unknown.
That all sounds like really good advice to me. Jay, what closing comments do you have for us?
There's approximately 8 billion people in the world. Each one of them has their own truth. What I suggest is go out, discover it for yourself, find your truth. That's my top advice. As far as going out doing that, just like the other great guests here have said, if you enjoy being out in nature, then you go out in nature. If you're doing your research, I live by 3 simple rules. 1, safety first. However you're going to go out to do it, that doesn't matter. Donna, you were talking about, humans. That's one of the bigger ones. We were talking about knowing your surroundings and just protecting yourself. And that could as well go with tick spray and mosquito spray. These are the little things people don't even think about. So I just say go out, safety first, and know your surroundings. And number 3, go out and have fun. Enjoy the woods. Enjoy what you do as a passion, to go out and to research, to discover something new. Maybe don't go out on the approach of you need to try to prove it to the world to get that social media status up or get the popularity up or to get rich and famous. You know what? If you're doing this, do it with an open heart. And I believe whatever being is out there is going to understand your intentions when you go out and do that. So, you know what? Go out and find your own truth, discover it, and be safe.
Couldn't have said it better. Well, all 4 of you, I want to thank you so much for coming on and taking part in this special show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Vic.
Thanks for having us on, Vic.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being on, Vic. Thank you.
As always, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been great doing this with you. If I can help any of you at any time, please do let me know. I'll be here for you. But having said that, Thanks again so much for your time. Have a great night.